welcome to GIDSS Talk. My name is Gurkiran Kaur and I'm here with Professor Ken Wyman today here at Humber College. Ken, thank you for being with us today for GIDSS Talk. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what has led you in the profession of fundraising?
I am a professor of fundraising. Who knew there even was such a thing? I've been a professional fundraiser for more than 35 years. I started out as a journalist, but got hired by Oxfam, the international development charity, to help raise funds. Ended up writing books on fundraising and helping teach a whole new generation. When I started out, we were accidental fundraisers. We didn't have any training. These days, amazingly, there are people who decide right out of school, this is the career they want, and we're able to give them a good, solid year of training so they know what to do.
Okay. Can you really make a career out as being a fundraiser? And if so, what are the options here?
You can, and people are really surprised at that. This is probably the best career that nobody ever heard about. People are lining up for public relations and journalism and a whole range of fields with the same sets of skills. And frankly, there aren't as many jobs in journalism as there once were. Fundraising is expanding. There are over 65,000 registered charities in Canada, and many of them have fundraising departments with multiple people. Hospitals, universities and colleges, arts organizations ranging from the ballet to the local gallery, social service workers, international development organizations, women's shelters. Just about every town, unfortunately, has to have a women's shelter and a food bank, and many of them have professional staff working as fundraisers. The pay is good enough to earn a living. You're not going to get rich in this field, but you can certainly raise a family and think about building a lifelong career that pays off in satisfaction. Using the same skills, you could sell sugar water, but wouldn't you rather change the world?
Do you think that fundraising jobs are highly unstable? A lot of people assume that it's just like volunteer work. What can an individual do that's in the field to further stabilize their position?
Well, it can be volunteer work. A lot of people have a day job and volunteer on a committee, and being a fundraiser is a useful skill. But there are many people who make it their full-time jobs and have lifelong careers. Some people will work in the same sector, a hospital, an international development charity, their entire careers. Others take pleasure in saying, I'm going to work for a university for a while, and then I'm going to work on a religious organization because that's where my heart is, and then I'm going to work with a children's charity, and my parents are getting older, now I'm going to work on a seniors project. There's a whole lot of variety, and that's part of the adventure. It's as stable as any job in society is these days, and whether people approach it as a side gig or as a permanent career, I know people who have been in the field in the same job for 25 years, moving up and becoming executive director of the organization, and others who enjoy saying, I'm not locked in. There's such a demand for fundraisers that there's always an opportunity. Here at Humber College, the students do an internship at the end of their 1 year of training, and there are 4 or 5 internship options for every student. That's how much in demand these positions are.
So Ken, discussing the satisfaction that you get in this position, do you really believe that this is a good field for new immigrants? And if so, then what are the skills that can be used as prerequisites to be successful as a fundraiser?
It's a great field for new immigrants. We've had people from just about every country in the world enroll in the Humber program. And the fact that many of them speak 2 and 3 languages is such an asset, because the donors are also new immigrants and old immigrants. Being able to talk to somebody in Gujarati or Korean or Mandarin makes it so much easier to get into their hearts and tell them the stories. Prerequisites? Well, for the Humber College postgrad program, you have to have a bachelor's degree. Whether that's here or something earned globally, we're open to exploring. But to enter the field, you don't necessarily have to have any prerequisites. There are lots of organizations that hire fundraisers just because they need help, they need it urgently. What skills? Have to be good at listening to people. That's even more important than talking to people. You have to not be afraid to ask. At some point, you have to let somebody know that their donation is going to make a huge difference and outright make the request. For some people, it's face-to-face conversations like this. Others are writers, video makers, creating social media, running special events. Everybody loves a good party, and charities make a lot of money by running wonderful parties. So all of those kinds of skills are very welcome in this sector.
So the skills that we learn here in Canada, how can they be transferred to other countries, especially in the field of fundraising?
They're very transferable, but you have to be good at adapting. At the very least, many of the grads of the Humber program have gone to get jobs in Canada, England. We have a remarkable number in Australia. So it's very portable. And in fact, the Canadian experience is highly valued. It's midway between a very aggressive American model and a very soft and wordy British model. So people love the Canadian skills. But it's far more global than that. One of our grads is now trying to set up programs in Bangladesh, where they've been doing fundraising and running charities for years, but now he wants to set up a training program. We have grads working in China, and many grads work with international development agencies on the ground, whether it's in Nepal or Uganda or South Africa. It's all the same basic model, but with variations. Some countries don't have the same postal models that we do. In Canada, sending people a fundraising letter is very normal. I spoke with someone in China a few days ago who said, we just skipped right past that and went to digital. And that may be a very appropriate model. In some countries, the online and phone giving is far more advanced than in Canada, and we're trying to catch up with Europe and parts of Asia. But in other countries, our banking system isn't the same as they use there, and so we learn to use Apple Pay, which may be available anywhere in the world. So they're transferable but adaptive.
What changes do you visualize in the field of fundraising? What are the upcoming challenges or projections for a country as multicultural as Canada?
Well, certainly because it's a multicultural country, one of the big changes is we need to be able to fundraise in all kinds of languages and understanding all kinds of traditions. So in Brampton, the hospital understood how important the Sikh community was and raised an amazing amount of money, and in fact, the emergency department is named after the Guru. Everybody needs to know not just Christian traditions that were the old way of doing things, but they have to understand when Ramadan is coming, what's going on in the Jewish community, when Chinese, it's not Chinese New Year, it's Lunar New Year, because of course Vietnamese and Korean people. So we all need to understand all of those traditions. Other things are changing too, of course. The technology is rapidly meaning that every charity needs to have a social media presence. We now have a course on how to make videos for fundraising because that's so important. At the same time, nothing is changing. The tradition of giving in every culture in the world is hundreds of years old. It may not be institutionalized, but every culture has said we need to look after each other. The multicultural nature of the immigrant community is also an interesting piece to explore. First generation new immigrants typically don't give to institutional charity. They have family at home and they're just sending the money directly. And in fact, the amount of money that Canadians send overseas every year to their family is substantially more than the international development aid that people like UNICEF and Plan International and World Vision raise. The second generation, they start building for staying in the country. So there will be schools and religious institutions. The third generation of immigrants begin to typically start normalizing and reaching out beyond their type community to say, well, I'm also interested in the art gallery or the theater, and I recognize that there's issues that affect the entire community, so I want to deal with social justice work and help homeless people. So there's a whole range of special knowledge required to work effectively with Canada's amazing multicultural society and the rapidly changing technology.
So if I, myself, or any of our listeners here today are thinking of starting their own charity, what are some of the tips and tricks that you would like to share?
If you're thinking about starting your own charity, my number one tip would be don't. We already have 65,000 charities in Canada. We have 400 different agencies that are dealing with international development. We've got several hundred dealing with breast cancer. We really don't necessarily need new charities. There's a lot of work in getting registered with the government so that you can give tax receipts, setting up the infrastructure so that the charity will last for years and years. People do it all the time. It's amazing how many people will go on vacation and come back saying, oh my gosh, I just saw the library in this country, or I met some children and I need to set up a charity. And often they are amazingly efficient because they are so passionate about it. Does it last for years and years? Does it develop the kind of long-lasting presence that a well-established charity can? Usually not. So, yeah, the first thing that you should do is find somebody who has experience in fundraising. Find a lawyer who can guide you through it, because not only do you need to get some legal papers signed, you need to make sure that you're protected from liability. Charity has a special event, serves alcohol, somebody goes out and gets into an accident, the charity can be sued and the entire board of directors could lose their houses. So I want to give people a great deal of warning and caution. If you're going to start your own charity, make sure you're doing it right.
We would like to thank you, Ken, for meeting with us today and being part of this program. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into GIDSS Talk. We would like to inform you that all of this series is part of the Bridging the Gap program, which is funded by the Government of Canada.
Thank you. I enjoy talking about this. I'm grateful for GIDSS making this kind of information available. And I'm grateful for the Government of Canada, which funds programs like this. I wrote several books on fundraising that the Government of Canada distributes free to anybody who wants them. I'll be happy to send people a PDF. And the government's response was basically, stop asking us to fund all the programs. Learn to fundraise other places. So we're delighted. Humber College, which also receives a lot of funding from the provincial government, would welcome people who are interested in applying to take the courses full-time. Our website is www.humber.ca/fundraising. Happy to see you online and explore more ways to make this world a better place.